All right, this is Module 12, the case study. Teacher reacts negatively to personnel evaluation by Tim Walker. So Section 1, backgrounds and facts. So current happenings, you have Mrs. Stevens. She's a teacher new to a building and is currently being observed by me, the principal. Mrs. Stevens' tenure is pending the current evaluation this year. If this evaluation is successful, then she'll be able to teach at the school with tenure. I have observed her multiple times in the classroom throughout this year. Her classroom appears chaotic until I enter the room, and then students start to settle down. And I've held a post-observation conference with Ms. Stevens where she became defensive of any negative comments. I completed one more observation. I recommended for non-renewal of her contract. She shared she did not feel trained, supported, or treated fairly by the evaluation, and go through the evaluation back in my face. And so I've yet to determine whether to submit the recommendation or not to the board. So who's involved kind of directly and indirectly? So direct involvement, you have Ms. Stevens. She's a teacher. She's highly educated. She has a decent background in education. You have the principal, that's me. I'm the main observer responsible for the evaluation of all staff members. Colleagues, while they're not mentioned, they would be indirectly involved in the case studies. So other teachers, her PLC, their cohort team, different things like that. Students, they're involved as well. So what is their academic level? And then other stakeholders, parents of the students, board members, human resources, those people are also involved in this indirectly as well. What is not happening? What we do know is that there's no professional learning that is documented in the case. We don't know that teacher mentoring programs for new teachers or teachers new to the district are occurring. Other supports in place for teachers, whether it's department chair, instructional coach, or district resources. We don't know if any of that is actually happening. Section 2, legal and ethical concerns. Legally speaking, there appears to be nothing done which was illegal. Without knowing any of the district policy for non-renewal, I can only assume the principal or I have followed the policy. Ethically, not offering support is detrimental to the teacher and the students in this situation. There was no appearance of harassment in the narrative as well, so that's also good to note. Synopsis. So Ms. Stevens, a teacher up for tenure, reacted poorly after she was observed and the recommendations was made to not renew her contract by me, the principal. Facts and gaps in the knowledge. So who's involved? So you have Mrs. Stevens. She's a teacher, highly educated, good background. The principal, the main observer, responsible for the evaluation. That's really about all we know. So we only know the two people involved. We don't know much of anything else. So let's further explore kind of what other factors are important and why. So you have demographics. So this would include location of the community, their daily schedule, what kind of school is this, the age of the students, type of school, courses taught, any of Mrs. Stevens' information. So why is any of this important? Knowing the makeup of the school, courses taught, and schedule will provide context for parental involvement, student academics, how much time is being used, and as well as community priorities. Mrs. Stevens' demographic will help in determining any pedagogy. So if she's an older teacher, what sort of pedagogy would she receive versus maybe a teacher who's 2 or 3 years removed from college, any of her implicit biases or unknown biases that she may have. Also, what's her experience in this type of school? Where did she come from? And any of her background information. Also, the type of course may lend itself to a different model of teaching as well. Being a former elective teacher, I know that sometimes those classes just operate differently than core classes. So also knowing that would also just help in identifying maybe some of the problems. So policy. So what tools are used for observations, the frequency of observations, the process for evaluation. So determining if the policy was followed, that's why, number one, that's why that's important. Is the tool reliable? Is it research-based? Has it been vetted in other classrooms? How the district expects teachers to improve, I think is also another important reason to know why, or to know some of the evaluation process. As well as knowing the policy will help in determining when evaluations take place and how. Professional learning, so some programs, so district expectations for professional learning, what has been offered, is there coaching, mentoring, what is their PLC model like, are they in a small learning community model? So any of these aspects that are available to Ms. Stevens and what's been done. So this reveals the latest pedagogy focus, as well as instructional coaches can help struggling teachers. Are there mentoring programs for new teachers? They can offer someone new teachers to collaborate with. Effective PLCs will help in planning and implementing ideas. So all of this stuff. And also professional cultural history. Including what is the current working culture of the building? What is the model of teaching that's espoused? Is it bell to bell? Is this, am I a principal that is super bell to bell? Or has this been, how long have I been a principal? It's something else, like I said, kind of left off the demographics. But what is the culture related to teacher performance? Strong cultures lead to strong teaching. So knowing the models of teaching being pushed in professional learning will help in knowing what to look for when observing as well. So options, plans, and implementation. So there are possible options ranging from the least amount of action to the most amount of action. So on the left, you have the least amount. This is me doing nothing. So one option for me is the principal is to do nothing, allow Ms. Stevens to continue her employment, and I won't do anything, nothing will change on my end. So allowing her to continue and do some individual training. So the benefit to that is that she will continue to teach, and will work with instructional coach or some sort of trainer. I could allow her to continue teaching and globally address some concerns. So she will continue to teach, and the building as a whole will work to improve through professional learning. I could submit recommendation to not renew and address concerns with the building. So I can still not renew her contract and train teachers globally for train teachers through professional learning as well, and address some of the concerns brought up by Mrs. Stevens. I can also submit the recommendation to not renew and do nothing to address any of the concerns. So this will keep her from teaching, but will do nothing to address any of her concerns, either if they are shared by multiple teachers. And then you have the most harsh punishment. Submit the recommendation and further recommend immediate removal. But based on her responses to the feedback and the wielding of power by the principal, that would be like probably the most egregious thing that I could do. So kind of weighing out some pros and cons. So doing nothing, it's the least amount of effort, for sure. She still gets to teach, saves having to hire anybody, and it could maintain any relationships that she may have with her students or with me or the staff. The cons is she still gets to teach. There's no improvement for the school or the individual, and it could damage the culture. Allowing her to continue and do some individual training. So some pros of that, she still gets to teach, works to make improvements. It could repair some relationships more so than the next idea or the previous idea. And students would have benefit from some improvement in instructional practices. Some cons would be no improvements could be made. She may be refusing to improve at all. Staff does not benefit as a whole. It's just an individual. It could create some animosity in the staff for those who feel that she was a poor teacher, or those who feel like, hey, I want some training too. Why am I not getting the training? And maybe she still gets to teach. That could be a con. Allow her to continue teaching and globally could address some concerns. So she still gets to teach. That's a pro. Improvements to staff and teacher, both. So improvements to the whole. That which benefits students. It could help build culture, and I don't have to hire anybody. Cons, it takes time and money. So training takes time and money. I don't know what the training timetable is in this district, as well as what's set aside, whether they do a late arrival, early release, different models like that. Another con could be no improvement could be made, or the staff could just be unengaged, like, oh, we're just doing this because of her. I could submit her recommendation to not renew and address concerns with the building. So pros, I get a new teacher. Improvements to the staff and teacher because through the individualized or professional learning that would happen, benefit students, repair some culture. It could also repair some relations with the staff depending on how she was viewed by the other staff members. Some cons is that I have to hire new staff and that may not be any highly qualified candidates. And the staff could be reluctant to change and they could be resistant to any of the training that I do. If I submit her recommendation and do nothing, so I get a new teacher, I kind of get off the hook of doing a little bit of work. I just have to hire a new teacher. And then I also establish my power in the building by, showing that I can flex some evaluative muscle. Cons, no good candidates to fill her role. There's no improvements made and the culture hasn't changed. Or it may change for negative. So that would be some cons there. If I submit her recommendation and further recommend immediate removal, sends a message to the staff of the severity for not being effective. She is not teaching. I definitely established some power. There's no changes in practices. I do get a new teacher, no good candidates, possibly long-term sub for the rest of the year. Definitely will do some things to tarnish or break some relationships that would be happening. In the end, none of these are still the best, so there's still many gaps to be addressed and considered in the school and district level. My plan moving forward would be to allow Mrs. Stevens to continue teaching, and either myself or the instructional coach will work with her. So that's allowing her to continue to teach and then work individually with her. And then begin the process to re-examine the building culture and professional learning. From this, I can learn overall staff thoughts on the building culture, examine common themes from the feedback to implement, and establish groups for pedagogy and cultural improvement. I'd create a professional learning plan with structured feedback and evaluation processes as well. So my plan for professional development would be to do walkthroughs with staff looking for strengths and weaknesses as a building, create a plan to focus on what is working for teachers to have student success, identify individuals to help in teaching the strengths, create time for walkthroughs and observation with peers, build time for professional collaboration, and vertical and horizontal teaming. So vertical teaming would be, depending on what the school looks like, it could be a 9 through 12 English teachers getting together, but then it could also be a horizontal team of all freshman level teachers getting together, a cohort-based team. Also create a leadership team which has an agenda of improving instruction and student engagement, and that way they can work on this professional development plan, thus distributing some leadership as well. Building cultural plan. So I would want to create some weekly recognition for all staff. So this could be for both certified and classified staff that they are recognized weekly. In my school, we have what's called the Hard Hat Hero, which is something that people do. Anybody can be up for it, from the custodian who just won it this past week to a 10-year, 25-year veteran teacher. Feature good teaching and regular communication. I think that is a huge asset to build culture. Monthly staff culture award awarded by staff members with it currently. So another way of for staff to recognize staff. Time to play together. Games for learning about teaching and each other. I think that's a huge and vital piece to building culture and building relationships with your coworkers. Engage teachers who have a passion for these activities to be a leadership team as well. Also work with community members to recognize and build up teachers. For both professional learning and culture, create and share a vision and mission statement to build both of these. So in conclusion, there's my conclusion statements. And thanks for a great semester.